Nope.
How about now?
Nope.
How about oh? It's Mike. This is the very supreme broadcast of honor podcast, Drivecast. Yep. I'm riding down the road. I'm recording this shit. Listen to me now. I've got a show. I make it up as I go along, cause you know it is the best place to be to get your games, reality, and news. And my views, everything I'm saying right now is made up, just like the show. If you don't like it, shut up and just go. There's lots of people that like when I talk about things and stuff and such. That's the way I get shit done in this life. You should try it once. Maybe you'll get a whole pile of friends. Welcome everyone to the very supreme broadcast of honor podcast, Drivecast. Why is there laughing there? I don't know. My name is Mike, and we're here for another episode where I drive home from work and talk about gaming. I've flirted with the idea of talking about other things other than gaming, but today we're going to stick with the gaming theme, and we're going to talk a little bit about what makes a good game. Thanks very much for tuning in. I'm still accepting submissions for theme songs. If you have a theme song you'd like to be featured in the show, just record yourself singing, rapping, speaking a theme song, whatever you would like to do for an intro or an outro. Just send it to tvsboh@gmail.com, and I will definitely put it in there. I have no qualms. That intro I recorded, it's not great. You know, it's just a silly, improvised, multi-track thing. Same with the outro. It's just, you know, I want to hear your songs, damn it. Why do I always have to sing? Why can't you sing for a change? Oh, God. Yeah. So, thanks very much for joining. By now, we're up to, episode, I'm going to say 6. I'm going to say this is episode 6. I might be wrong, so don't hold me to it. I lose track because I've recorded them over vast periods of time and uploaded them at different times and so on. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and without much more ado, let's get on with it. So what makes a good game? I think there's a number of things that make a good game, and a lot of it depends on different things. So it depends on age group, it depends on your mood, it depends on your environment, it depends on how much money you have, it depends on a lot of different things. And I believe that there are still a number of elements which make up a good game regardless of those things. So we'll talk about all of that. If you haven't heard this podcast before, I make it up as I go. I think of the topic minutes before I hit record on my crap-ass iPhone. And I put the iPhone down on my lap, so you're always nestled cozily right there in my lap. So what I think makes a good game is, that sounded like Christopher Walken a bit. What I think makes a good game is for me, it's the way that I'm just sort of thinking out loud here. The way that games have been developed over the years, they started out with just a simple idea, and they tried to implement it, and then they presented it. That's, in my opinion, that's sort of what happened. Like, there's limitations on technology, what technology is available at the time to create the game and then play the game back. So I think it really started with just the idea of, here, I want to make a game that just works. And then that was good enough for the masses, that was good enough for the programmers at the beginning. It was a concept, and that was about it. The graphics weren't really a thing. I mean, they tried to squeeze the most out of graphics eventually, but I think it really just started with whatever they had, and gamers were usually, I think, content to play the game at least for a little while because there wasn't a massive amount of variety. And I'm thinking back in the Atari days or the Apple II days. So over time, we're able to be really choosy now. Like back to present day, we're able to choose, from just a ridiculous amount of games in 2014, because you can still play the games that go back to Apple II that I was talking about before. You can still play all those games all the way up to now. So you have a choice to play retro games, as they're called now. You have the choice to play, the most advanced Titanfall or, Battlefield 4, that kind of thing. Those options are there for you. So that's sort of why we think about what is a good game to ourselves, because we have those options. We have I don't need to ever play a Japanese dating simulator game if I don't want to. It's not like, well, there's only that game and Oregon Trail. Those are the only two choices I have. It's not like that. It's I can play only Japanese dating sims, or I could play whatever I want, So that's sort of the basis for what I'm talking about, in that we have choice, and that because we have choice, we now have a set of guidelines that probably evolve over time about what we like in a game. So obviously I'm going to talk about what I like in a game, because I can't speak for other people really at all. There's many different types of game players. There's many, and I just refrain from saying gamers, because there's sort of a new movement going on where people don't want to necessarily be called a gamer just because there's a negative connotation on the word gamer now. It's almost a bad word, because if you say to your coworker, I'm a gamer, instantly they may conjure up thoughts of, well, all you do with your spare time is sit in front of a console, or a computer and just play games, and you're really overweight, and you've got Cheetos stains all over your hands and your shirt, and also you only drink energy drink. Like, there's a lot of stereotypes now with the word gamer, so I'm sort of making an effort to stay away from it a bit, just to be conscientious of people who want to be. Anyway, I'm getting off on another little thing there, but that's how this podcast works. You know that by now. You know me. So we have all this choice, and it's different for everybody who plays games. So I think, to start off for myself, a good game needs to have a balance, and that's my personal preference. I like games that have a balance of action, drama, comedy, good graphics, or like a balance of all these things. It doesn't have to be one over the other. I like a nice soundtrack. You know what I mean? I'm sort of a middle of the road gamer in that way. I'm a very, like, I can play many different types of games and be entertained. But I think for me, I like a nice balance. So, for example, and in this day and age, it's not even just like an average of those things. You can get a game that's very high on the rating with all of those things. So, for example, I keep thinking about the game Dishonored. And I know that's not the standard anymore, or the best game anymore, or the newest game anymore. It's a couple years old now. But I played that game all the way through, and I was thoroughly impressed and entertained the entire time. I find find that it was graphically, like visually stimulating. It was like the scenes, the backgrounds, and I'm not just talking about the main character and the effects that you bring into the game, like with different items, smoke bombs and such. I'm not talking about that. I will talk about that, but what I'm talking about right now is the backgrounds, like the scenery, the far away visuals, the up close visuals in terms of your environment. They put a lot of effort. I mean, they put a lot of effort into every game, usually. No, I can't even say that. There's definitely some shitty games out there, but I'm sure they did put some effort into it. But games like Dishonored, they put a lot of effort into it. And for me, when I'm playing the game, I feel like it was worth the amount of money that I spent on the game. And that to me is a sign of a good game, especially a game that you pay major dollars for. I believe I paid upwards of $60, with the tax for Dishonored. And when I was playing it, visually, I was entertained and excited by it because it was just so well done. It was so vivid. There was a realism to the game while still creating a parallel universe to Earth. It wasn't necessarily, happening, in 2014 downtown, in Canada where I live. It wasn't like that, but it just had this enough realism to make me really appreciate it. And so the visuals were good in that game. I think about the sound, and I'm talking about the music, but specifically the sound. I think sometimes people don't really pay attention to sound in games. The sound design, just amazing. The way they make use of stereo sound or even surround sound, the way that they record the sounds and the sound effects. In this game, in Dishonored specifically, just brilliant, really well done and believable. They made good use of, ambient sounds and reverb to give it the appropriate qualities based on the environment you were playing in at the time. So sound is another really important thing to me. And again, there's a number of things about Dishonored that were great. Music was awesome. The games are playing, major games are using and paying for really good symphonic soundtracks, and it's not just the quality of that point, but also how they change the music while you're playing. So all of a sudden some action starts. How do they transition from maybe an ambient soundtrack to action soundtrack? Or, if there's a cut scene, which I want to talk about cutscenes, how do they transition the music into the cutscene? So as a musician, I really pay attention to that sort of a thing, and I think Dishonored did that very well. Cutscenes is something I want to talk about because I think the cutscenes they did with Dishonored and the way that they bring you in and out of cutscenes was, again, very well done, very fluid, very natural, and in some regards, if I'm remembering correctly, the cutscenes were basically interactive in that, not interactive cutscenes, but sometimes there weren't even cutscenes. You would just walk into an area and sort of a triggered event would happen. I guess that's not really a cutscene. That's sort of its own separate thing, which they did both those things well then in that case. So yeah, graphics, sound, replayability. This is something that I value in certain types of games, and I think they did build that into Dishonored because you can play it in so many different ways, and that's just such a huge thing in today's world when you're paying $70 for a game, let's say. Replayability, that may be the only game you can afford to buy that year or maybe that month or whatever, but even if you can afford lots of games, you still want to be able to come back to it later or play it through again if you really enjoyed the game and play it in a different way. see what happens. And Dishonored does that very well again because, in my opinion, because if you can play, you can kill people, you can do it all silent, you can mix and match with those two models. You can there's just so many different ways you can play the game, and end up with different results sometimes. Like you finish a level, but you've killed everyone, so it changes things, or you didn't kill anyone, it changes some things. Obviously, the Telltale games do a very good job with that whole scenario, with the changing of the story and so on. I haven't actually played it personally, but I watched Hannah of the Yogscast play through the first whole chunk of The Walking Dead. But so for me, those things make a great game. And again, Dishonored has a balance of those things, and I don't mean that they sacrificed one for the other. They didn't average it out, but there's a good mix of good graphics, good sound, good realism, good replayability, good all of these things that I've mentioned. And that to me, that was such a satisfying game because of those things. Now I found game mechanics is something that a lot of people look to these days. I don't want a game to be overly complicated in its game mechanics. So if you have to fly a plane and it's just super realistic to the point where you have to control every little thing like you would on a real airplane, and you have to push 200 buttons on your keyboard, I'm not really into that so much. I mean, if in a game I have to fly a helicopter, an airplane or something, and I can get in it and kind of figure it out based on a universal model of flight control for games, which most games do very well nowadays, I must say. Like in DayZ or Arma 3 or Battlefield 3 or 4 or something like that. Generally, you can jump in and figure out the controls. Maybe you have to control the throttle one way. Like Arma 3 is more realistic, and there is a little bit more you have to do, but it's not too overwhelming as long as you know what you're doing. But game mechanics is another thing that make up a game, and sometimes if they're too simple, it's not enjoyable for me, and if they're too overly complicated. Like I say, I like a middle-of-the-road game where it's a little bit of a challenge, but it's still going to be an entertaining game where you can at least, keep up with other players or the AI in a realistic way. Sometimes you're looking for that extra challenge and you want a precision type of game, or other times maybe you're looking for a really sort of an easy game, a squishy game where it doesn't really matter. You just mashing those buttons and you move on with your life. I kind of find that Diablo 3 is like that, where I guess squishy isn't really the right term, but like a mashing game where you just mash on the keys or hold down the keys and you win. So I think Dishonored was a good mix of things for me. It was a long game. There was a lot to do. There's a lot of different skill paths you could choose, so you can have different types of skills for yourself, and that's important, especially in that kind of game. Just noticing. I wonder where that went. Oh, there it is. Sorry, I'm driving, so of course sometimes I obviously am paying attention. Please don't go in there. Yeah. Nice. The parking meter this morning was frozen, so I couldn't put my money in it, so I had to use an old ticket and put my money on the dash with a note saying, the thing was frozen, I have the money here, please don't give me a ticket. And they did not. But then the loonie, which is a Canadian dollar, rolled across my dash earlier, and I forgot about it. Just now remembered. Anyway, that's the Drivecast for you, getting that real-time driving action. Oh, I'm going down a huge hill now. Get ready, whee! So those are some of the things that I look for in a game. And again, Dishonored, I feel, had a good balance of those. A game that I'm currently majorly addicted to is Dota 2. And that's the game I play off stream, off YouTube. I don't really play those on the stream or YouTube that much, if at all. And It's just my go-to game, and it's something that's funny. When you're a YouTuber or a Twitch streamer, you really feel guilty. At least I do, and I've heard other people say this phenomenon too. If you play like most games, you may feel what the fuck's going on here? You may feel really guilty about playing games off stream and off YouTube, because you kind of feel like you're wasting precious gameplay time, or you are progressing a character that you started on a stream or on YouTube, and you can't do that because you'll mess up the timelines with your viewers. So Dota 2 is the game I play off stream and off YouTube that I just don't feel guilty about it, because you play these quick little games and it's not really important to the stream or YouTube. I don't feel like I'm wasting any footage or anything like that. You do get the odd great game that maybe you wish you'd recorded, or some crazy moment that happens. But overall, I let that go and I just play it and enjoy it. It does frustrate the shit out of me sometimes, especially when there's so many assholes in that game. And I've on the previous podcast there I talked about multiplayer communication, but slow-moving vehicle, goodbye. I pass you now. I hope that's okay with you. If not, try to catch me. What? So, Dota 2, for me, it has a different set of standards. And the reason for that is, for me, this is an outlet game. This is a game where I'm just doing it to relax. I'm doing it to have fun. There is a little bit of skill. Well, I think there's a lot of skill in Dota 2 in that there's a lot you have to be doing at a time, a little bit of micromanagement, paying attention to so much at the same time. So there is some challenge and some skill in using your brain and stuff. But I don't hold it graphically to the same standard that I would hold Dishonored, obviously. But it still meets for the type of game that it is. I mean, if Dishonored was a shitty game, like shitty graphically, it would probably detract from the experience, and I wouldn't enjoy it as much or at all if the graphics weren't good. If that realism wasn't there for me, I probably wouldn't care to play it. If the game was cartoony, if it was like really sort of, and that's a personal preference of mine. I don't enjoy overly cartoony games, but Dota 2 is definitely a more cartoony game. But if you're comparing it to other games, it is. But if you're comparing it to what is it called, a MOBA or a tower defense type of game, if you compare it to its competitor, League of Legends, Dota 2 is less cartoony looking than League of Legends, in my opinion. I played League of Legends for a little while just to feel it out, because I like Dota so much. I thought I might like League of Legends. I don't like it as much. Obviously, if I learned all the ins and outs, I might like it more. But the style for me is more cartoon-like than Dota 2. So for that style of game, when I crave that style of game, it's like a 15 to, well, I shouldn't say that. It's a minimum 25 minutes to a maximum of an hour is sort of the time frame for Dota 2 games. When I'm looking for that kind of a game where it's just an hour, it's start to finish, and I can test my skills in different ways, I judge it differently than I would a Dishonored game. So for that type of game where it's not going to take me a month to complete, I'm not looking for that hyper-realism. I'm not looking for that advanced graphics. I'm not looking necessarily for sound effects 100%. But that said, I feel Dota 2 has good sound effects, For the type of game that it is, I feel that Dota 2 has a really good soundtrack. Of course, you can turn the soundtrack off and play your own music, which I do sometimes. Dota 2 has good replayability, amazing replayability in my opinion, because there's shitloads of characters you can play. Like, I don't even know how many there are, but there are a lot of characters to choose from. And within those characters, there's different ways to make builds, so you can buy different items. There's like all these items you can choose, so you can play the character differently. There, if you play in the ability draft, you can choose other people's skills and just customize even more. So there's like billions of combinations and different games, and you'd be playing with different characters against different characters, and just the combinations are amazingly limitless. And to me, that makes that style of game, and for that type of gaming, when I'm looking for that sort of 1 hour game, start to finish, a unique experience every time maybe, or if I want to play ranked or whatever, that style of game for me has everything it needs to be a good game. And again, if you're comparing it to all games in the world, it does not have the best graphics. It has decent graphics for what it is, but again, you wouldn't compare that to Titanfall maybe, or Crisis or whatever you want to compare it to graphically. It's not in the top tier, obviously, but it's, for what it is, it's still pretty good. They added the thing where you can zoom right in on your character and all that, and it's not insanely detailed, but the effects when you cast spells and different effects are animated differently, and you can change those animations. So customization of the game and modding of a game, in a way, it's not truly mods, but you change the way the game looks with different HUDs and skins and different animations and different weapons and different this and that. For me, makes Dota a really great game for that style of game. So another type of game are shooters, and for me, that has a whole other set of standards. Oh, cool. There's some really great, sorry, back to a driving tip or situation. There's some really great scenery in Ontario, Canada, especially where I am, and I'm just driving by a lake, and it's frozen. It's fucking March, and it's frozen, middle of March, and it's frozen, but there's a little island right there, and some deer were just like coming off the ice, going up the island. Sun's kind of going down. Fuck, just amazing. I love it. Anyway, sorry. Back to the game part. I've distracted myself. But shooters. I played Battlefield 4 briefly during the open beta. I had access because I had bought the premium of Battlefield 3. And it was fine. I just didn't feel that I needed to pay another $60+ for a game that was just like Battlefield 3. I know that they added a few different things. They improved the graphics, yada yada. It's different maps and, different weapons, and they changed the commander stuff and whatever. But I just didn't feel that it brought me a new enough experience from Battlefield 3 to purchase. So I just didn't buy it, and I still go back and play. That's another game I don't feel guilty about playing off stream or off YouTube, is Battlefield 3. So the odd time now, if I'm not feeling Dota for whatever reason, I'll just jump into a Battlefield 3 game. I still feel that Battlefield 3 has some great maps and some great modes, and I still really enjoy it. There's still a lot of maps I haven't played. There's a lot of achievements I still haven't unlocked with Battlefield 3. So, I still jump in. Eventually the servers will die off, as I've seen them doing, as people focus on Battlefield 4. But I really enjoyed the Battlefield 3 series. Not the Battlefield 3 series, the Battlefield 3 iteration of the Battlefield series. I played every single iteration of it. right back to Battlefield 1942. I can never remember if it's 1942 or 43 or something. Whatever it was, the original, which was a free download, I think. I think it was free. I can't remember why, but it was a free download. So I chose to download it. And why was that free? I got it through the, what's it called, Origin? Yeah, Origin delivery thing. I think it might have been from SimCity 5, from their screw-up thing where they let you download a certain number of games, or maybe it was just had to do with Battlefield 3 Premium. I don't remember, but anyway, regardless. I played that game all the way from way back when until all the way up to Battlefield 3, and just a great series. Battlefield 3 was really great. A lot of replayability, fun to play with a group of friends, fun to play on your own. So many different stuff you could play. You know, if you wanted to be a sniper, there's plenty of maps to snipe on, medic, all that. It was. I still enjoy it. Like I said, I still have a great time playing that. I found it was a good shooter. There's a lot of problems on release. It's just like Battlefield 4. There's a ton of issues on release. So many bugs. It took them a long time to get them all completely cleaned up. There's still bugs, even though the game is pretty much done. I'm not sure if they will release more bug fixes or not going forward now that Battlefield 4 is out. But, I mean, it was a massive undertaking, and they eventually got it all some of it sorted out. Like I said, there's still some problems. Battlefield is it's more my style of game for a shooter versus Call of Duty. That really fast, in your face, just like spawn and die sort of gameplay isn't really my thing. I really like the long game better. Battlefield 2, Bad Company 2, I think it was just the best sniper, had some of the best sniper maps in my opinion. And I like that long game where you can't see everybody. You may have to drive in a Jeep for like a full 30 seconds or even a minute or 2 minutes to get to the other side of the map where the other flag is, where people are maybe fighting, or maybe someone's just hiding in the woods between there. I like that style of shooter versus a Call of Duty, really close quarters sort of shooting, because I'm not good at it, to be honest. I'm better at the long maps. I'm really good at my forte is sniping, or at least deceptive gameplay where I trick people or I'm hiding somewhere. And I know, like, tactics. I'm more about tactics rather than, being able to do the quick scope or no scope stuff. I'm not good at that at all. So I prefer a tactical shooter. So that's why Battlefield is good for me. Not saying that Call of Duty isn't good, because I think for that style of shooter, it is good. I think the Battlefield really tried to pick up on the Call of Duty audience by introducing close quarters maps, and then they may have done that. They may have converted people, or some people are brought over a bit of that Call of Duty audience. And I'm just not into Call of Duty at all. I don't enjoy watching the gameplay or playing it myself. Again, because I suck royal balls at it. I suck at a lot of games, as you guys know, but I usually have fun with Battlefield, at least because I can pull off some skill with Battlefield versus Call of Duty. But what makes a good shooter, in my opinion, you're looking at the realism of the guns or the weapons, the realism in terms of the way they look on the screen, the way they feel on the screen, like feel when you're using them. And that, I mean, that's a subjective thing, but the feel of the weapon really has to do with how they represent recoil of the weapon, how they represent the aiming, how they represent bullet drop, and all that. It sort of leads to the weight or the realism of the weapon, how much damage it does, that sort of thing, what it does to the other players. all of that ties into the weight of a weapon, or the feel of a weapon, even though you're obviously not really feeling the weapon in your hands and against your body in an environment. You still, as long as the weapon behaves as you would expect in terms of the noise and like the sound effects, the lighting effects, does the weapon just, like, how do the shells show up on the screen, if at all? Is there a smoke effect coming from the gun, like a smoke coming out of the muzzle, or a heat effect on the gun, or does the enemy get blown back a little bit, or do they react to different guns differently? All of that comes into play. Again, the accuracy, the bullet drop. There's a lot of things. For me personally, if a weapon is more like, as long as the weapons are different from each other and they display some of those things I talked about, then usually it's a good game for me, a good shooter. I like realism in a game. So shooting is real. Like, it's not magic. We're not talking about magic here. Shooting is a real life thing. So I tend to judge a shooter based on those things I mentioned. Like, for me, I think Call of Duty, that's another thing that doesn't appeal to me, is I think it's there's a lot, like, the gameplay's too fast. I find that the shooting may be a little bit too fast, or, how fast you switch weapons. That's another thing. How long it takes you to set up a C4 charge, or, how long it takes to call in an airstrike, if that's part of a game. I don't really like that either, because it's sort of indirect, and I'm not really about that. I prefer you have to run up and throw C4 at somebody and pull the trigger. Okay, you're not really going to do that in real life, but if you can do that and take the proper amount of damage while you're there, then that's okay, as long as the explosion feels, quote unquote, feels real. The visuals are there. Is there blood? That's another thing that can be part of a game. It's not necessarily required for me for a shooter, but it can add to the gameplay, and I usually like to have blood on, and blood should be, again, quote unquote, realistic for me. If it's like really cheesy color, like if the color isn't appropriate or the blood effects aren't right, just for me, it's not good. Do you shoot a person and there's no blood showing on their outfit, or on them? There's all these things, and I know that there has to be a limit to these things based on your machine's ability to process them, and the ability to create them, and the ability for a server to handle them, and all this. I know that, but I'm just saying what my preferences are. I think that Battlefield does a fairly decent job, and I'm just talking about Battlefield 3 really here, because that's really my last experience with a shooter. That's the only thing I have to go on right now. I enjoyed it. Some of the weapons felt a little bit light. Some of them didn't have as much impact as you'd want, but like some of the SMAW or the M249, I think it is. This is another thing. I'm not a real geek I don't memorize weapons. And I'm saying geek, I don't mean to offend anybody, but there's that geekiness, that fandom level of shooters where people remember weapon types, and and again, that could be game geekiness, or that could actually be real life weapon awareness, which is something I don't have either. But I don't have that, or the game geekiness where people remember, like, and that game geekiness goes over into games with magic in it, or any sort of a game, memorizing all the different stats and equipment and damage per second and all that stuff. Other people enjoy that part of the game. That's not really for me. I like to know damage per second maybe, but not all the other crazy stats. That's too high level for me. It takes away from the enjoyment a little bit. I like a little bit of that. Again, middle of the road gamer. I like a balance of that stuff. Anyway, I feel that Battlefield 3 did have some good sound effects. I like the visual animations for weapons. I like how long it takes to get out a weapon or set up a bipod or set up C4, stuff like that. I found that they worked really hard and did a good job of the timing of those things. The effects when you get hit with things and other people get hit with things. All of these made for a good game for me, Battlefield 3. Again, a lot of bugs. There was a lot of hacking. And that's maybe something else I want to talk about. So for first-person shooters, I liked Battlefield. That's personal preference over like Call of Duty. Again, kind of different games, but I know that Battlefield really started to blur the lines over into a Call of Duty type of maps and quick gameplay. But I feel that Battlefield had a better balance for me in the different types and the different styles of gameplays that you could bring. Really super long range plus close combat was in there if you wanted. So I like Battlefield 3 for a good type of game. And I did mention what makes a good game. Again, you could have a good soundtrack to a shooter as well. I tend to turn the music off that they have and put on my own sort of pumped up music or whatever I'm feeling at the time. I think good controls sort of is something that goes over all games. Yeah, you have to have a good control scheme that's, and the ability to plug in a controller and play is a huge plus for people. I hate using a controller, so I don't do that. But that should be there for the option for people. I think I totally just forgot what I just said. That was a good idea to talk about. Give me a second to think about it while I have a drink. That's awesome. I completely forget. You know exactly what it was because it was literally less than a minute ago. Son of a bitch. Another thing I want to talk about was games that are like magic, that have magic in them, or role-playing games. Skyrim's the best. That's in my opinion. Sorry, but Skyrim takes the cake for any game ever, in my opinion. It had a great replayability. It has a huge storyline. I know some people didn't like the storyline as much, but it had a decent story, like a long storyline. It had great graphics. It had great soundtrack. Sound effects were pretty good. Some of the weapons felt a little light, but not too bad. I know some people didn't like that, but I didn't mind it too much. I love the bows. The magic effects a little bit lacking, in my opinion. There could have been more diversity and maybe some more variations. A lot of people didn't like the mechanics of the magic and the various things of the game, but I didn't mind it. I just had enough replayability, enough of these other things that made up for that for me. And the modding ability, huge. Just friggin' massive modding ability. It's bothering me so much I can't remember what I just said. That was a good thing to talk about. Son of a bitch. Another thing that makes a good game is price. I did talk about pay, so I won't get into that. Just tune into that. Check out that last podcast. Not last, but a couple ago that was about pay models. I did get into that. So, but it just needs to be fairly priced. I'm not big on subscription fees. I know that they've got to pay for servers ongoing and such, but I personally am not into that because I jump from game to game on a whim. So if I would feel shitty about paying $10 or $15 or more dollars a month to play a game and then lose interest in it. Maybe I want to come back to it a year later, but I don't want to be paying a monthly fee only to lose interest in it halfway through my subscription and feel like I'm wasting my money. But fair price, it's got to be accessible. Like tutorials are a good thing if it's a complicated game, or at least the ability to change the controls and learn the game quickly. Steep learning curves can be okay, like Dota 2, so steep. I'm still learning how to play the game quote unquote properly, or all the things that are in the game. Why don't you slow down to 0 to turn around the corner, you son of a bitch? But yeah, those are some of the things that I think make up a good game. There's definitely been some bad games out there. Releasing a game too early, I'm sort of something I do want to talk about at some point is betas and alphas and that new gameplay model. It's something we could delve into. But just overall, releasing a game before it's ready, here's the trap that people fall into, and I think I may have even talked about this on another podcast, but falling into the trap of releasing too much information too soon. If you start the hype way too soon with vague details, but you also make some promises, you've got to try to live up to those because people get hyped around them. Then you release a shitty game because it's not done. It's just, if you say, yep, hey, guess what? In 1 year, guys, we're releasing the newest game. It's going to have the best game mechanics of any game ever made. Well, now you've put the pressure on yourself to release the game that has the best game mechanics ever made. You've claimed it. Now you've got to live up to it because everyone starts talking about it. You start getting interest. Magazines start to interview you about your game and be like, hey, please explain your game mechanics and how they're so awesome. And then people start reading. They're like, yeah, this sounds fucking amazing. I want to play this game. I'm going to buy it. When does it come out? 1 year? Okay, I can wait 1 year. I can wait 1 year. And then, as it builds up, you keep the hype going. That's your major game point or selling point is the mechanics. You can't fucking disappoint. If you release a game and the mechanics are sort of cool but not really finished, not polished, or all you have is game mechanics, and then they get into the game, they're like, okay, yeah, there's great game mechanics like you said, but this is like the shittiest game ever made. Like, there's no story, there's no point to me even playing this. Yes, the mechanics are interesting, but what the fuck? So you can't rush a game. You can't send it. You can't hype it up and then release it half done. So many games have done this. And in my opinion, a lot of games, even some of the favorite games or the good games, are releasing it way too buggy, way too early, and it's fucking things up. SimCity 5, Battlefield 3, you can't. They're setting unrealistic release dates. In my opinion, they need to leave it in alpha way longer, then closed beta way longer, and then open beta longer, and then once it's fucking polished, then release the damn game. I think what the problem is, the quick turnaround, is because of all the money they invest in the game in the first place. They got to start paying that shit back. The people are like, well, we'll give you all this money to make this game as long as we have our money back by this date. So I think you kind of get, game companies kind of get screwed that way. So it's got to be polished. It has to be worth the money they're going to pay. Graphics, sound, music, all that stuff. It's got to be there. If you release a game that's just a piece of shit, half finished, and I think it comes down to time and money and people, and they may not have the time and or the money or the people to finish it or to get it out on time, or to, their investors are breathing down their necks, or there's been a fight between the developers or the publishers and the programmers and the tester, whatever. Like, there's going to be problems, and people are, maybe go bankrupt or trying not to go bankrupt. I don't know, but it's not a good game if you release it before it's ready. I understand there's going to be bug fixes and stuff, and I remember there used to be games that came out and they were pretty polished. Games used to be pretty polished, and then, a week later someone would say, hey, did you notice this, and this error? And it'd be like, shit. And then, you'd have to either get a new CD with a bug fix or download it off a website. Eventually that came around, and it would be a huge download for the time, but at least you could get a fix for it, or a hot patch. It would just patch the game, whatever. Those things did exist eventually, but I personally, I guess because the games are so much more complicated now and more intense and there's more going on, that there are just so many more bugs that they just don't have the time to find them all ahead of time. And I don't know, I guess you have to think about that, but it doesn't make for a good game when you buy a game and you can't even play it on the day of release, or like you buy it ahead of time. You can't play on the day they promise that you will, because you get excited. Some people even take days off work and shit. I mean, I don't do that kind of stuff, but some people do, and that good for them. They have the holidays, or they call in sick, whatever. That's their business. But if you promise they can play a game on this day, they damn well better be able to play it. And so often now, server problems. Test your damn servers ahead of time, you know? If you're going to have 1 million people playing your game, at least fucking test it with 750,000 and up the bandwidth and get enough servers to go over that. I don't know. Obviously, it's a problem of money and coordination and time and people and blah. But we're talking about what makes a good game, and that's where that goes for me. If you're making a sequel, please be careful. You've got to be careful. If your first game was overly popular, and you now have to add a level of, you know, are you going to jump the shark? Are you going to basically just like take all the elements of the first one and put in the second game, change some colors and call it a new game? Or, you know, you can't really do that. Well, you can, but you're not going to be as popular. You know, are you going to change the story? If so, how much? There's probably a balance issue there. Are you going to completely have all new characters, or are you going to bring back all of the old characters? Are you going to introduce new ones? All of these things are things that have to be thought of and balanced out properly. Basically, what my point is about sequels is don't shit on the original ideas and stories too much. I mean, you can tweak things, change things, make it new, whatever. But if you change a story completely or completely disregard what made the first game good, you might piss people off. Then again, if you don't update it to newer graphics or introduce something new, you may also piss off some people. You're never going to please everybody all of the time. That's a truth. But there's certain standards, I think, that need to be adhered to make it a good game. Anyway, I think I'm going to end the Drivecast here for today. I hope you, again, are enjoying my rambling. As happens, I had a good idea there, and I lost it almost right away because I'm focusing on my driving plus thinking of things as I'm talking. So if you're still here, obviously, well, hopefully you're enjoying this format and you're enjoying what I'm talking about. That's been another TVSBOH podcast Drivecast. For another episode, I am Mike, and I am now the only person left in the very Supreme Broadcast of Honor at this point. I believe this is the first Drivecast I've done where Higgins is no longer with us in the TVSBOH world. So we wish him well. And thanks for still sticking with me in the very Supreme Broadcast of Honor. We have a lot of great things ahead. And if you want to send a theme song, it's tvsboh@gmail.com. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, it's tvsboh@twitter.com. Facebook is tvsboh@facebook.com. Also, watch me live on twitch.tv/tvsboh. Did I say those wrong? I was concentrating on going through a small town here. Did I say them weird? Oh my God. I'm so tired today. You know what it is. Facebook.com/tvsboh, Twitter.com/tvsboh, Twitch.tv/tvsboh, and obviously YouTube.com/tvsboh if that's where you're listening to this. And I hope you have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Many burritos to you. Bye-bye. Podcast is over, and I was glad that you were here. If you ever need to pick me up, just send us a tweet or watch our videos or live stream or just sing this song. I like burritos, I like burritos, I like burritos, man. I like burritos. That's the end of the podcast.